Did you know using your browser in incognito mode doesn't actually protect your privacy? Take back your privacy with IPVanish VPN. Just one tap and all your data, passwords, communications, browsing history, and more will be instantly protected. IPVanish makes you virtually invisible online. Use IPVanish on all your devices, anytime you go online at home and especially on public Wi-Fi. Get IPVanish now for 70% off a yearly plan with this exclusive offer at ipvanish.com/audio.
Welcome to Like Mother, Like Murder. I am Rachel.
And I'm Heather.
We bring you the good,
The badass,
and the crime.
This is Like Mother, Like Murder.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Like Mother, Like Murder. It's only me, Rachel, at the moment, because today we are sharing a very important episode from one of our favorite podcasters. When this is released, it is September 11th, and I got the permission to share an episode that the amazing Jules Thorpe released on a survivor of the attacks on the World Trade Centers. Jules shared this episode on the collaborative podcast You Should Be Here, on the most recent series, which was Death Not Yet, the Survivor series. If you have not yet followed, subscribed, binged all the seasons of You Should Be Here, I highly recommend that you go and check it out. I mentioned it's a collaborative podcast where all of the podcasters donate their time, their research, their efforts, and 100% of the earnings go directly back to those in need, a nonprofit that is chosen for the series. Please take a moment to go and subscribe there so that you can join in the incredible fight to be a part of the change that You Should Be Here is doing. And thank you to the amazing Jules Thorpe, my business partner and friend, for allowing me to share this incredible, powerful episode on this historically tragic day. Before playing the episode, I did want to leave you with this quote. If we learn nothing else from this tragedy, we learn that life is short and there is no time for hate. Life is a matter of choices, and every choice you make makes you. I hope that you guys make the choice to choose love. We need a lot more of that right now. And always remember, you are loved, you are worthy, and you deserve to be here.
Fire Eyes Media.
Welcome to Death Not Yet, a You Should Be Here podcasters give back series. Each episode focuses on an individual whose story exemplifies perseverance, bravery, and survival. Like a phoenix rising from the ashes, these individuals in these cases today will inspire and encourage you to keep going. Death Not Yet is a collaborative effort from true crime podcasters who aim to focus on victims and give back to the community. Every penny donated will go back to an organization helping surviving victims of crimes navigate through their forever changed lives. To donate, guys, please go to buymeacoffee.com/You Should Be Here. Hi, everybody. I'm your host, Jules Thorpe. How are you? And You Should Be Here is my passion project. I want to take a moment to thank you for being here. Just by listening to our podcast, you're actually helping us give back to victims and families. Thank you to every podcast who has participated. And don't forget to catch up on our previous series of You Should Be Here. We have the Homicide Tree and Or No. And I'm excited to announce coming in October of 2025, we will have our largest production of You Should Be Here, which is titled Cases Which Haunt Us. Make sure you subscribe to You Should Be Here to not miss any episodes or updates. I'm one half of Fire Eyes Media, which is a proud women-owned company which focuses on changing the space of true crime, creating by putting the focus on ethical storytelling. I host the investigative podcast Missing in Hushtown, and you know what? I'd love for you to subscribe and join us and become a Wicks warrior and hear the entire story of the 2004 unsolved homicide of Jennifer and her baby girl, Adriana Wicks, wherever you get your podcasts. When I was thinking about a title for this series, I was thinking about the strength and primal will to survive it had to take for these heroes to not just survive the worst day of their lives, but every single moment of their lives thereafter. And here we find ourselves on my episode where I'm going to share about one of the bravest individuals I have come across, a survivor of the September 11th, 2001 terrorist attacks on the United States. Let's go.
52 here in New York. I'm Bryant Gumbel. We understand that there has been a plane crash on the southern tip of Manhattan. You're looking at the World Trade Center. We understand that a plane has crashed into the World Trade Center. We don't know anything more than that. We don't know if it was a commercial aircraft. We don't know if it was a private aircraft. We have no idea how many were on board or what the extent of the injuries are right now. It's 8:54 right now. Stuart, can you tell me when this happened exactly?
I would have to say about 10 minutes ago.
We're on the line with another eyewitness. Sir, this is Bryant Gumbel in New York.
How are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you. You're Wendell?
Yes, I am.
Wendell, can you give me your last name?
Klein.
Wendell Klein. Tell me where you are, if you would.
Well, right now I'm back in the hotel. I'm in the hotel offices here, the front office.
You're in the... Okay, where were you when
I was standing right in front of the hotel. I'm the doorman there. And...
The hotel. Which hotel?
Marriott World Trade Center.
Right across from the World Trade Center.
It's actually right in between them.
Right in between the World Trade Center.
Yes.
Okay, so you were standing outside, and tell us what you saw and what you heard.
Well what I heard first, an explosion. And I just figured that it was a plane passing by. Then all of a sudden, stuff just started falling, like bricks and paper and everything. And so I just kind of ran inside to get away from the falling debris and glass and so forth. Then after everything stopped, because it was falling in the street and the cars were crashing into each other. Then when it kind of stopped, I heard a guy screaming. And when I looked over, there was this guy that was on fire. So I kind of ran over and I tried to put the fire out on him. And he was screaming, and I just told him to roll, and he said he can't. And then another guy came over with his bag and kind of put the flames out on him. So right now, he's being taken care of. I just had everyone call the ambulance and stuff so it can help him out. He
caught fire as a result of the falling debris?
Yeah.
How much debris, can you give us an idea of how much came crashing to the ground?
It's just a lot. Bricks, a lot of bricks, a lot of glass. Enough to damage cars on the street, make cars swerve into each other, that kind of thing.
I hear alarms going off down there. What's happening?
That's our hotel alarm, and basically, I guess that went off automatically. They've evacuated everyone in the hotel. They evacuated all employees.
They have evacuated the hotel?
Yes.
Immediately?
Yes.
Are you hearing anything, Wendell, about what kind of a plane it was or how many were on board?
No.
All right. Mr. Klein, thank you very much, sir. I understand Teresa Renault is with us right now. Ms. Renault, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
This is Bryant Gumbel. I'm down on 59th and 5th. Where are you?
I am in Chelsea, and we are at 8th and 16th. We are the tallest building in the area, and my window faces south, so it looks directly onto the World Trade Center. And I would say, approximately 10 minutes ago, there was a major explosion from probably, it looks like about the 80th floor. It looks like it's affected probably 4 to 8 floors. Major flames are coming out of the north side and also the east side of the building, yes. And it was very loud explosion followed by flames, and it looks like the building is still on fire on the inside.
Which building are we talking about? The one that's westernmost?
Let's see. Yes, sir.
Did you hear the explosion from your position?
Yes, we did. As a matter of fact, we heard it, and because I was just standing there pretty much looking out the window, I didn't see what caused it or if there was an impact.
So you have no idea right now?
There's another one. Another plane just hit. Right. Oh, my God. Another plane has just hit. It hit another building. Flew right into the middle of it. Explosion. My God, it's right in the middle of the building.
This one into the east tower?
Yes. Right in the middle of the building. And right now, that was definitely looked like it was on purpose.
You saw a plane?
Yes, I just saw a plane go into the building.
Why do you say that was definitely on purpose?
Because it just flew straight into it. It looks like it's about, I would say 15 floors lower than the first building, and there's now flames coming out of that building as well. They're both completely on fire.
Now, Teresa, hang on with us 1 second. We're going to re-rack the tape of when we were talking to you to see if we can tell.
Okay.
We can't see anything. We can't see a second plane in the picture. There we see the explosion.
Tom CANAVAN was a family man. He had a son whose birthday was coming up, and his wife, well, she was pregnant with their second child, this time a daughter. And as he was headed into work on September 11, 2001, it felt like any other day to Tom. The day comprised of task lists, routines, and thus it was ending with family time, typically, and what he expected it to be. However, this day, in fact, in just a few moments from his arrival to work on September 11, 2001, he would find himself buried alive. Now, before we begin, I want to give credit to the podcast Addressing Gettysburg Officers Club, who did an incredible interview with Tom CANAVAN, and I'll link the episode in the show notes to hear Tom's story in his own words if you want to hear the entire interview. It's so well done. So Tom worked at the First Union. It was a brokerage firm in the North Tower of the World Trade Center, and he worked on the 47th floor. Most people, he says, stayed out of the towers until 9 a.m. Because that's when most businesses started at 9 a.m. So a lot of people would get there early to get, over the big rush of the trains. Tom worked in First Unity, which was a brokerage firm in the World Trade Center on the 47th floor of the North Tower. Now, he says that most people wouldn't start work actually until 9 a.m., so it would not be uncommon to see a lot of people outside with their coffee, talking with other people, looking around. There are lots of markets. There was lots of music out there. People would mingle and chit-chat and then slowly meander their way upstairs for that 9 o'clock start time. Now, this is important because, as many of you know, the first plane will hit the North Tower before 9 a.m. So it leaves us to wonder how many people's lives were spared because of their start time. Unfortunately, Tom was one of the individuals already in work because they worked with a lot of people in different time zones. So he would actually get up for work around 5 a.m. and then he would arrive to work around 7:30 a.m. and go into the building. Now, his half of the floor was the west side view, which was the Hudson River. Now, you can imagine how beautiful that was with the cityscape and the sparkling river to look over. And it's on September 11, 2001 at 8:46 a.m. when Tom was on a conference call in his boss's office when the first plane hits his building. And he's inside the building on the 47th floor. Now, this first plane hits floors about 92 through 98 on the north side of the North Tower, killing every individual on board of the hijacked plane and making every person on floors 92 through 110 trapped and headed towards imminent death. Tom recalls how he felt. The building, when the plane hit, it rocked left and right, and then it kind of just recentered and righted itself, and they didn't know what was going on. He looked out and saw smoke, metal, glass, and papers flying down, and he looks down and he sees the Marriott Hotel underneath him. The roof is on fire, and concrete chunks were up on the road, and down below, getting closer and closer, the NYPD was rounding the corner. Tom makes a great point. For those of us who didn't know, the World Trade Center was like its own little city. They had something that they called the mall, and it was a self-sufficient kind of entity where they had a dental office, a post office, cleaners, Krispy Kreme donuts, and it had amenities for everything and everyone there. So that would also bring other people into the World Trade Center as well, not just workers. Now, I won't go into depth the timeline of events of 9/11 because I do want to focus on the events as it pertains to our survivor, Tom, and his story. But a bit of detail refreshing may be needed to fully understand the magnitude of Tom's experience working in the North Tower of the World Trade Center. The plane, American Airlines Flight 11, that's the plane that hit his building at 8:46 a.m., the North Building, went all the way through. I mean, the gap from the plane went from about, like I said, the 92nd to 98th floor, but the North Tower only went up to 110. It had 110 floors, and Tom relays that there would be about 1,600 people who never had a chance to make it out of the tower alive. And for those inside the building, they had no outside insight to what was going on. The world was watching, and they knew about the hijacked airliners having hit the towers. But since he was on the middle floor of the building, there was not a means for him and his colleagues to have that information to know it was an emergency and to thus evacuate immediately. A few things to note: September 11th was the first day of public school. So Tom notes how many people were in the office, maybe a little later than usual, maybe just a little bit later than 9, because they were taking their kids to school. Thus, that day and the alignment of the dates against the terrorist attacks may have saved many individuals' lives. Now, by the time the ceiling tiles started hanging in the office, Tom could hear water gushing through the walls, and he started hearing a lot of noise from the stairways. When he went to the stairway, he immediately saw a rush of people hurry down the stairs. Still not knowing what was going on, he knew he had to get out there immediately and just figure it out later. So he heads back to his office and tell his colleagues who were at work earlier, like he is, that they all need to leave immediately. However, when they head back to that same staircase, it's now completely jam-packed. There are people everywhere, and there's no way for them to get into the staircase. Now, Tom did a lot of extra work on the side throughout the years, commercial moving, and this gave him the insight knowledge about 2 other staircases, one which was on his floor. However, that one was starting to be filled with smoke by now, so he recalls taking his jacket and jamming it under the door, the jam under the door, to prevent more smoke from coming in of that staircase, to prevent them from getting all that smoke inhalation. Now, he takes everybody to the other staircase, and this is called stairwell B, and there was hardly anyone in there. He took the rest of the people to the center stairwell with him, and they quickly began their descent from the 47th floor to the 1st. He recalls how people were moving but not panicking in this stairwell as they go down, and people were casually talking on the way down. Now, at this time, the lights were on. There was no smoke, but around the upper 20s floors, they were moved into single file while responders started heading up. And just to walk to the floor where the fire was, floor 92, you guys, it would have taken about an hour and a half for the first responders to reach the fire by foot, climbing up the stairs. And now recall, they have all of this equipment on them. It's extremely hot in this building by now. Smoke inhalation, these conditions are horrid. He recalls how people were moving but not panicking, and people were just casually talking on the way down. The lights were still on in the building. There was not much smoke, but that changes around the upper 20s floors. When they reach those, they are then moved single file line down the stairs because first responders have started heading up with all their equipment. They're rushing to get up. And you guys, just to walk to the floor where the fire was, so that would be floor 92, that first floor where the plane hit, it would take the first responders about an hour and a half for them to reach the fire from the first floor. But at this point, Tom had no idea that first responders were going up for a rescue operation, not just to put a fire out and prevent any harm to the building. It would end up taking the first responders about a minute and a half to do one floor, to climb one floor, especially with all of their heavy equipment and gear, and you know they're booking. Tom recalls how he started to see people coming down with rescue services with massive burns, and the injuries began looking worse and worse. And this made everybody in the stairwell move down even faster down the floor. Still not sure what's going on, but they know enough to know we need to get out of here. This is an emergency. And at this time, Tom gets to the concourse level, which was where the mall was, kind of like a basement. And at this point, they still don't know what's going on. And while he's heading down the North Tower at 9:03 a.m., when he's in the stairwell, the South Tower gets hit. So when he finally arrives to the ground floor in the concourse, he does not know still that the next tower is hit because he's in the stairwell. He has no idea. And remember, he still doesn't know that a plane hit his floor either. Now, when they enter the mall, which is essentially, like I said, the basement, they are sent to the Krispy Kreme exit. Tom recalls how, that location was something that everybody in the World Trade Center knew about. Krispy Kreme was just a popular place in there. So using that as a point of exit and reference was a great idea for everybody to kind of maneuver and get to. However, as he was headed that way, he notices behind him an elderly couple trying to keep up behind him to go through the corridor. Now, the doors were shattered by then and it was slippery, and he saw the elderly couple kind of struggling to get through. So he looks up and tells his coworker, "Go ahead, get out of the building. I'll be right back." And he turns around to help the elderly couple. Now, it's this decision which will lead to the continued string of traumatic events to come. As Tom heads back to the doorway and just barely steps outside, he feels an intense rush of heat occupied with intense wind and coupled with intense noise. He recalls it sounding like multiple freight trains rushing at him. He calls ahead to his coworkers to keep heading out of the doorway, go, 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 but he's not sure if it even escapes his mouth, because what happens next? The rubble from the South Tower building would then collapse on top of Tom. Tom, who had just managed to escape the building, barely taking a few steps out into the mall, is now crushed and buried alive. Tom recalls on the podcast addressing Gettysburg Officers Club how the air was extremely hot, and he realizes, my pants are on fire. And at this time, Tom believes the ceiling had collapsed on him, so he begins to move, but the air is scorching, and he hears people begin to talk around him, and they're saying, "Stay put, they're going to find us, don't go anywhere, they're going to find us." But Tom decided if he stayed, he would be burned and crushed to death. And recall, he has a son who's about to have a birthday. His son is about to turn just 3 years old, and he has a baby girl on the way and a wife. He decides it's time to move. Now, a security guard, who he still to this day does not know whom he was, grabs his leg, and together they begin to move, as he describes, like snakes, with concrete and rebar collapsed around them. Kind of the way it landed was like a little bit of a tent, creating an air pocket so it didn't crush them all the way. They tried to find a path without resistance where they could get through. But fires were popping up here and there all around them. The only good thing about that was that it would add light to see, because they were in pitch black. Now, this would take 20 minutes, and the only reason he wasn't crushed to death by the concrete and rebar, remember, is because the way it fell was at a slant like half of a tent. It fell around him and created that air pocket, and some people can say that that was a guardian angel looking out for Tom in that moment. Now, in Tom's mind, he tried to stay in a straight line. He didn't want to go around in circles and lose his orientation. And this decision paid off. After about 20 minutes later, like I said, him and the security guard see a small beam of light, and they know they have finally reached the outside. Now, according to an online article from Star News, Tom relays, quote, "I squeezed myself through the hole. I was scraped from head to toe. I was hurt and I didn't feel a thing," end quote. And he made it out. But 4 of his coworkers, they did not. 4 of the coworkers that initially came down with him from the North Tower were never seen again. Now, that same tower that Tom and that unidentified security guard would have crawled out of will completely collapse at just 10:28 a.m. But let's back up a bit. This part's tough, but it helps to tell the magnitude of the story of Tom's survival. Tom has to work to move objects out of his way to get moving toward that small beam of light. And this means he had to move what he recalls as mannequin parts out of his way. You guys, he now knows that they were not mannequin parts, but they were human body parts scattered all over the rubble, all around him. Now, to put it into a bit of perspective, there were approximately 22,000 body parts recovered from the scene, and there are still 1,100 body parts recovered that are unidentified. To this day, there's still a dedicated team of people who are working diligently to identify the remaining victims. Now, Tom made his way out of the wreckage by tunneling about 40 feet, which is about 4 floors, and about 70 feet diagonally. And he did this all while having a huge contusion to his head, being in a state of distress, not knowing what's going on, smoke inhalation, gashes all over his body. But he was able to get out onto the street eventually. He squeezed the man out in front of him, and that man crawled through the rubble and waited for him and said, come on out, come on out. But Tom actually couldn't fit through the same little hole that man did, that security guard. And he looks out again and he sees a man walking away barefoot. And so Tom yells at him, come back, come back. And that's when the guy turns and says, "Come on, get out, get out, get out." When just then another round of wreckage comes down, and this man, this unnamed security guard, disappears, and he's never seen ever again. Once he squeezed himself through all the pain, Tom realizes his shoes were actually melting into the ground beneath him. And to this day, he's not sure if the security guard fell through the wreckage, through a gap created by the explosions, or if wreckage fell on top of him. But again, to this day, he's still unknown who that man was and what happened to him. Once Tom emerges, he hears these crashes all around him, kind of like thumps and thuds. And he realizes while looking up, it's people jumping from the North Tower and falling all around him. Now, Tom is grabbed by an FBI agent and says, "You have to get out of here." And it's just then when the entire North Tower collapses behind him and he runs to a side of a building for protection from all the debris, projectiles all around him. And in the hospital, he has to have his head stitched up. He has this huge gap, flap of scalp flapping open. He has a lot of contusions, a lot of stitches needed, but he does check himself out. He grabs his melted shoes, puts them on, gets out, and he knows, "I have to get to my wife." It's then that he calls her and she says, "I just knew for some reason, I just knew you got out." He recalls later that day that losing 4 people from his office was actually, a lot. One person is too many people to lose. And he has regrets about not leaving the tower even faster immediately the first time they felt it shift. The North Tower had everything knocked out, so the communication wasn't possible. As the plane went right through the tower and cut all of that communication out. However, the South Tower still had one staircase left, and many people left immediately. Even though the tower fell first, more people were able to get out of that one. Tom spent the next consecutive days obsessing and watching the news obsessively and acutely listening to any names of survivors to identify anybody he knew to survive. Tom is still alive today to tell his story for us to learn and experience a piece of history through his experience. Tom worked for years at the 9/11 tribute in New York, and if you ever go to the memorial today, you'll see his watch framed on the wall, shattered and frozen in time. The day the world stood still. The day Tom decided to choose to literally rise from the ashes. Thank you guys for being here and for listening. This has been one of the toughest episodes for me to do, to revisit all of these moments and to see these faces while I was doing my research and to really dive deep into this event that, I'll be honest, I think about time to time, but I haven't sat down and really dug into one of the thousands of stories that I know of survivors or victims whose lives and their loved ones' lives were forever changed. The horror that I imagine them seeing and recounting it's hard to comprehend. And for empaths, my fellow empaths out there, take a breath, because this was a little bit of a heavy one on my end to share with you, but it's super important. The will and the fight to survive and to strive, and there's circumstances that sometimes things just line up enough to give you a chance to get out of hell. For Tom CANAVAN, this isn't just an annual remembrance. It's not wearing a flag on September 11th or saying we remember. It's the trajectory of his life and purpose forever. I think we can all recall exactly where we were when that first plane hit the North Tower on September 11, 2001. But for Tom, that moment, that day, that is his every day, his every breath for the rest of his life. It has become his story, his legacy. That's it, guys. I'm Jules Thorpe, and this has been Missing in Hushtown for Death Not Yet, a You Should Be Here collaborative podcasters give back project. If you want to connect with me, follow me on Instagram at your host Jules, Jules. I love when I get new friends that say hi and we can stay connected, and you can suggest cases to me over there as well. I'm working real hard to become a better victim advocate, learn better, do better, be better over here. So I would love to hear from you guys. You are wanted, you are loved, and you are not alone in this. Bye, guys. You take care.
Fire Eyes Media.